Okay, so hi everyone, this is Mansi Babbar. Today's session is all about reactive microservices. So there are some knowledge etiquettes we should follow. First is punctuality. We should respect the knowledge session timings. You're requested not to join sessions after a 5-minute threshold post the session start time. And the second thing is feedback. Make sure to submit a constructive feedback for all the sessions as it is very helpful for the presenter. Then the third thing is mute. Please keep your window on mute. And the fourth thing is avoid disturbance. Avoid leaving your window unmuted after asking a question. So moving on. So this is the agenda for this session. We will be covering topics like monoliths, service-oriented architecture, microservices, reactive microservices, principles of isolation and isolation techniques. So let's start with the introduction. So we will be learning about the transition of an application from monoliths to service-oriented architecture to microservices and finally to the reactive microservices. So this can be achieved by applying various isolation techniques to the application. So the design of an application generally lies somewhere on the software spectrum. It has monoliths at one end and microservices at the other end. And most of the applications that get built lie somewhere in between this spectrum. Okay, so when we talk about microservices, there are various concerns associated with it. Like, what are the differences between monoliths and microservices? What makes a good microservice system? How can we try to balance between monoliths and microservices based on their pros and cons? So as I already told you that most of the application getting built lies somewhere on the software spectrum. That means they have certain features of monoliths and certain features of microservices. And this is something we need to understand, that to what extent we require the nature of monoliths or to what extent we require the nature of microservices for our application. So moving on to our very first topic, that is, what are monoliths? To start explaining the microservices, it is useful to compare it to the monolithic application. An application is said to be a monolith when it is deployed as a single unit. Monoliths have a single shared database. They communicate with synchronous method calls where you send a message and expect a response immediately. So we are calling it as a single unit. Why? Because you may deploy a monolith multiple times, but within each instance of the monolith, everything is a single unit. That means the entire monolithic application is deployed as a single unit. So there are various cons associated with monoliths, which are, we are limited by the maximum size of single physical machine, because as the monolith grows, it is going to occupy more memory, it is gonna need more CPU, it is gonna need more system resources. So you will end up with a cost issue with it, because as you go to these bigger and bigger machines, they become more and more expensive. So monoliths have deep coupling, which leads to inflexibility and which further leads to slow development. So there is often deep coupling between the libraries and the components, and a lot of time that is through the database. Like, you will have different parts of your application all relying on the same data from the database. So that creates deep coupling, which definitely gonna lead to inflexibility and slow development, right? So monoliths, they can scale as far as the database allows, as it rely on the relational database, right? So you can deploy multiple copies of the monolith, you can put them on multiple machines in order to continue to scale up, but often these are relying on a relational database, which probably runs a single instance in order to maintain consistency. So you might have multiple instances, but there is often a master-slave sort of scenario. Because of that master only scale to a certain point. So at the end, we are again limited by the size of a single physical machine, right? So in monoliths, the serious failures in one component often bring down the whole monolith. So what happens is, when one instance of the monolith goes down, it redistributes the load to the other instances, and even they can't handle the load either. So now they start to collapse as well, and this is called cascading failures. So these are some cons. Also, like, all components have to be scaled as a group, even if some of them require scalability. So even though though certain components of application may require less resources, it does not matter. You have to scale everything at the same time. As a result, you may have unnecessary use of resources. So then the last disadvantage is redeployment of entire application on each update. So for every minor change, we have to redeploy the entire application. And due to these cons of monoliths, there is a concept called monolithic ball of mud, right? So so basically monolith is considered as a ball of mud as it does not have clear isolation, and so also we cannot divide it into subsections. There are complex dependencies, etc. So that is why monoliths are considered to be as a ball of mud. So these are some like major disadvantages of monoliths, right? So that is why we are moving towards the microservices. Okay. So now the next topic we have is what is service oriented architecture, that is SOA. So we can introduce isolation in our application using service-oriented architecture. So SOA is an architectural style that structures an application as a collection of smaller independent services. These services, they do not share a database. Each service will have its own database, its own logic, and its own domain. And the communication between these services can occur via synchronous messaging or asynchronous messaging. So these services are directly exposed to each other. These services are not directly exposed to each other, so they communicate via some clearly defined APIs, right? So now SOA provides flexibility to deploy your application either as independent units, which closely resemble to microservices, or as a monolithic application, right? So like the SOA is basically the gray area. Either you can move towards the monolithic part of your application, or either you can go towards the microservice part of your application. So the choice is yours. It is completely based on your requirements. Now coming to the pros of SOA. So SOA provides isolation and loose coupling between services. Now due to this isolation and loose coupling, any change to the internals of one microservice does not cause a change to another service, right? Also, the serious failures in one service does not cause cascading failures to other services. So then since these services are accessible through external APIs only, as I already told you, you're free to evolve the underlying code, right? So these services, they also support like multiple platforms and multiple languages. It is very easy to build your application in any programming language and using any database. You don't in SOA, you don't have these big bang style releases for the application. Like teams are not constantly communicating with each other to synchronize on various tasks. They have a particular task, they do that task, they deploy that change, and then they move on. This results in shorter release cycles, right? Okay. So now the question arises, we learned about the pros of SOA, right, which are actually like major pros. So now the question is, what are the cons of service oriented architecture? Like, why are we moving towards the microservices from SOA, right? So SOA does have cons, which are like each interaction between services is followed by a full validation of input parameters, resulting in greater load and increased response time, which is definitely a very big disadvantage. We never want this. Then the services, they constantly exchange messages while executing the task, which results in complex service management. So that is one more disadvantage. Then we have, it requires a large upfront investment by means of technology, development, and human resource, which is definitely a disadvantage from a business perspective. And then each service, they share a common communication mechanism, which is called ESB, that is Enterprise Service Bus, which can become a single point of failure, right? So what ESB does is, it focuses on connecting the monolithic applications that serve an enterprise, and each of these applications, they performs a variety of services. So like each of the services in the service oriented architecture, they share a common communication mechanism, which is ESB. And now like if I have a common communication mechanism and if that fails, then definitely like my whole application is going, it will go down, right? So it is a single point of failure. So these are some cons of service oriented architecture. Next up, we have what are microservices. So microservices are a subset of service oriented architecture. The difference between them is that SOA doesn't dictate any requirements around deployment. Like you can deploy SOA as a monolith, or you can deploy each of its services independently, right? So if you deploy all of the services independently, that's when you start to build microservices. Do you see the difference? Like SOA provides the flexibility, like either you deploy the application as a monolith, or either you deploy the application as individual units, right? So now if you deploy the services, if you deploy the application as individual units, that is where you're building up the concept of microservices. So microservices require that each of those services are independently deployed, right? So we we are deploying the services independently, but we are still keeping up all the rules around the SOA. Like we are maintaining our own data store, we have our own database, we have our own, like each microservice has its own database, each microservice has its own logic, right? And like each microservice is communicating only through a clearly defined API. We are following those rules, okay? Now coming to the pros of microservices, as I told you, microservices follow the SOA rules. It takes up all its advantages of SOA, but without its disadvantages. So it's like a better version of SOA without any, without any demerits of SOA, right? So our microservices should have a single responsibility. It should have only one reason to change, right? So okay, now any number of copies can be created for individual services based on the requirements. That is the another pro. Now also we have like each service can be independently deployed, which means that they can be put onto many different machines. They can also be scaled independently. Also, there are no database dependencies and synchronous communication dependencies among the microservices. So these are some of the pros of microservices. Along with we also have the pros of SOA as well. So these are the some of the pros which SOA doesn't have, right? So that's why we are moving toward microservices. Now coming to our main topic, what are reactive microservices? Okay, so the transition of an application from microservice architecture to reactive microservice architecture is done by creating isolation between the microservices, and that can be done by using various isolation techniques, right? Also, the reactive microservices should definitely follow the reactive principles. That is, like each microservice should be responsive, resilient, elastic, which is scalable and message driven on its own, right? Each microservice should follow like each of this reactive principle, right? So now what are the principles of isolation? So the principles of isolation, basically they specify the basis on which we can isolate our microservices. So we have four principles of isolation. They are isolation of state, isolation in space, isolation of failure, and isolation in time. So these are four basic principles which specify how can we isolate our microservices. And the benefit of the isolation is to provide reduced coupling and increase scalability, right? There are various other benefits as well, but these two are the major benefits that the isolation is providing us, okay? So let's understand these principles of isolation one by one. First is isolation of state. So this principle, it allows the reactive microservice to evolve internally without affecting the outside, as it only communicates through the public facing API, right? I told you this. So as long as we maintain that public facing API, nobody needs to know what happens under the covers, right? Nobody needs to know that we have that we have changed the database, that we have restructured the database. Nobody needs to know that we even rewrote the domain code. All of that can evolve independently. So that is So this is basically the idea behind isolation of state, and which is very necessary to make our microservices reactive. Then we have isolation in space. Reactive microservices are independently deployed and they do not care about the location of other microservices. That means it does not care whether it is deployed to same piece of hardware or maybe a different piece of hardware or in the same data center or maybe a totally different data center, right? It does not care about the location of other microservices. So it has a single method of communication which works no matter where the microservices are deployed. Okay, so this is basically the idea behind the isolation in space. Next up we have isolation in time. So in reactive microservices, requests are asynchronous and non-blocking. It allows for more efficient use of resources. So rather than having a situation where we send a request and then we block a thread while we wait for a response. But what we are doing in reactive microservices is we send a request and then we walk away. That allows for more efficient use of resources because we don't have to occupy that thread and threads. We don't have to occupy that thread, right? So if we can free up the resources, it's just not the thread. Like freeing up the resources does not mean freeing up the threads only. You can also free up like the memory. We can also free up CPU, all of these things, right? So like isolation in time, it definitely provides an efficient use of resources. Okay, coming to the isolation of failure. So the reactive microservices, they isolate the failure which prevents the cascading failures. I talked about it earlier, right? We have cascading failures. Like if we have a failure in one microservice and that failure cause successive failures in the other microservices, those are called cascading failures. Okay, so the reactive microservices, they isolate a failure which prevents the cascading failures. So the more we follow this principle, the more robust our system is going to be. Ideally, if we get to the point where any of our services can operate completely independent of all the others, right, then that leaves us in a really good state. Like each of my service is operating completely independent of others. If that is happening, then I think my application is going to be like it's going to be like very reactive. It's going to follow all the reactive principles, and it's definitely going to be robust, right? Okay, now next up we have what are the isolation techniques. So the isolation techniques are provided to isolate our microservices on basis of the 4 principles of isolation. Okay, the various isolation techniques I will be explaining are bulkheading, circuit breaker, message driven architecture, autonomous microservice, and API gateway service. So the first technique is bulkheading. So in this technique, we try to create failure zones within our application so that when a failure occurs, it is isolated within that zone and it is not going to propagate to other services, right? So if we have a microservice which can act as a failure zone, for example, then that means that even if that microservice fail, it is not going to affect the other services. The other services are going to operate in their normal way, right? Without any degradation, maybe, right? So so the idea here is that the overall system should remain operational even in the face of fairly significant failures. Though the entire application or the entire system might operate in a degraded state because, you know, like some of its services are not working, but still the system is operational. Like it is providing some of its feature and while fixing up the others, right? Okay, moving on. Next technique is circuit breaker. So circuit breaker is a way to avoid overloading a service. So what they do is they quarantine a failing service so that it can fail fast. This is the concept of circuit breakers, right? So like we have 3 states for the operation of circuit breakers. First one is closed state. In the closed state, any request that gets sent just goes through the external circuit and everything works as normal. This is the closed state, okay? Then the second one is what we have is open state. In the open state, all calls are immediately failed without contacting the external service, right? So it means that the external service now has a chance to recover, since all calls are immediately failed and they are not contacting the external service. Now the external service can recover, right? We're not going to continue to put more and more load on the external service, right? So the third state we have is half open state. So in a period of time when the circuit breaker attempt to reset itself, at that point it goes to the half open state. Okay, so so if in a scenario like when a microservice is calling another microservice, that is overloaded and that may fail, right? Like for example, I have a microservice A, I have a microservice B, and microservice A is calling microservice B, and the microservice B is basically under overload and it may fail, right? So now the caller microservice, it may not realize that the called microservice is under heavy load and it may retry. Like the microservice A, it does not realize that the microservice B is under heavy load, and A is still trying to send the request, still trying to retry, does not understand that B is under load, right? So this results in more load on the microservice B, that is the called microservice, right? So thus the caller microservice, it need to be careful to avoid this. So this is pretty much the concept of circuit breakers. Okay, moving on. Okay, so next technique is message driven architecture. So reactive microservices follow the message driven architecture, and in message driven architecture, microservices use asynchronous and non-blocking messages, right? And since and they do not depend on the response from each other, right? So this allows isolation in both time and failure, right? And if a request to a microservice fails, the failures are not going to propagate. So these are some major benefits provided by the message driven architecture, that just by following asynchronous non-blocking messaging, we can allow isolation in both time and failure, and if a microservice fails, the failure won't propagate, and also the microservices are not dependent on the response from each other, right? Okay, so next technique is autonomy. So what is autonomous microservice? So so understanding this concept, like microservices, they can only guarantee their own behavior, right? They communicate through their API. They can't guarantee what other microservices are going to do. So isolation allows those services to operate independent of one another. When services are very tightly coupled, they are not isolated, they can't operate independently, right? To operate independently, they need to be loosely coupled and they need to be properly isolated. So also in autonomous microservice, they don't require other services to be operational at all times. Like there might be a possibility that some of the services are not working, some of them are facing failures or something, but in that case, my microservice, which I am considering it to be autonomous, it shouldn't be affected by the failing microservices. It should be it does not require the other services to be operational at all the times. Okay, so this autonomy behavior, it provides both stronger scalability and availability. Also, fully autonomous microservice can be scaled indefinitely. You can just keep creating copies of them. They have no dependencies, so there is nothing preventing you from scaling forever, right? So fully autonomous system is a pretty rare, possibly non-existent thing, I understand, but the closer we can get to a fully autonomous system, the better situation we are going to put ourselves in, right? So a fully autonomous system, a fully autonomous service can continue to operate even if it is the only part of the system still running. You can imagine a scenario that in your reactive system, you have various microservices, and for example, all of the microservices are facing failures except one, right? And if you're following the concept of autonomy, then that single microservice can afford to run on itself, like it is not going to be affected by other failures, by other failing microservices, right? So that is that is an ideal situation, I might say. But like the more closer you get to the situation, the more robust your system is going to be, and the more reactive your system is going to be, right? Now the question arises, how can we achieve autonomy? Okay, so now like we can achieve autonomy by, you know, communicating through asynchronous messaging, and by avoiding any kind of direct synchronous dependencies on external services. So at the end of the day, it's all about finding ways to isolate your microservices. The more isolation you can put in, the more autonomous your microservices are going to be. Okay. So the final technique is API gateway service. Well, one of the disadvantages of reactive microservices is that they can create complexity, particularly in your client application, right? It is a possibility. So monolith, so if I explain this concept, like if I want to explain you what kind of complexity a microservice can create. So for example, a monolith is a relatively simple process, right? The client just make one request, deals with one failure, and when we move to microservices, that gets more complex, because now that information is not contained within any one microservices, that is potentially contained within multiple microservices. So do you understand, like sending the request and dealing with the failure has become complicated now. So the client actually needs to make individual calls to each microservice. Then it need to aggregate the information or the response from those microservices and then present that response collectively. So do you understand, like I have multiple microservices, and now what my client layer is doing, it is sending requests to each of those microservices and then collecting their response and aggregating those response and presenting it, right? So that means the client need to know about each of the different microservices. It need to know whether they exist or not. It need to deal with potential failures of each of those microservices, right? Which again is additional complexity that we don't want to deal with, like dealing with all the failures of dealing with failures of all microservices and knowing about every other microservices is not an easy task, right? So that is definitely a complicated task, and it leads to complexity. So all that complexity that used to be handled by a monolith has moved into the client, right? Now the client layer is facing this complexity. So thus this increase in complexity is problematic, right? So if we want to deprecate a microservice or move it or add an additional microservice, we can't do that until we ensure that all clients are up to date. My client is not facing any kind of issues, my client is not facing any kind of problems, it is not facing any kind of complexity. Only then I can deprecate a microservice, or I can move a microservice, or I can add an additional microservice, right? So now the question arises, how can I manage these complexities, right? So to manage these complexities, we have introduced API gateway service. So this API gateway service is put between our individual microservices and our client. It acts as an interface between the microservices and the client, right? So now what happens is our client make a request to the gateway service, and then the gateway service knows about all the individual services that it need to talk to to fulfill that request, right? So it send the request to individual microservices and aggregate the response. So do you see, like what is happening here is like the client is now making the request to the gateway service rather than directly making the request to the microservices, right? And now the gateway service is taking the response from the microservices and giving back the response to the client, and aggregate the response and give the response back to the client, and then client can present it, right? So it is acting as a mediator between the microservices and the client. Okay, so now the aggregation logic is moved from client to the API gateway service. So now, if a failure occur on one of the individual microservice, the gateway service is responsible for figuring out how to deal with that failure, right? Like earlier, what was happening is the client layer was responsible for the client layer was responsible for figuring out how to deal with the failures, what that failures are, where is it coming from. Now all of that headache, all of that overhead is now on the API gateway service. Now it has to figure out what the failure is about, right, and how to deal with it. So this this may mean that the servicing that this so this may mean that the API gateway service has some sort of logic that it allow to recover from that failure. Like you can provide some sort of logic to the API gateway service, so it can understand how to deal with the failure, right? How I can recover from the failure, right? So thus we are creating an additional layer of isolation between our client and the individual reactive microservices. So I think like this is it with reactive microservices. So like the main point here is you can move from monolith to SOA to microservices to reactive microservices just by providing isolation among your components of the application, right? The much better isolation you provide, the much more isolation you provide, the much the services are going to behave independently. The system is going to be that much robust, that much reactive, that much distributed, right? So I think this is it. Any questions? Okay, I guess no. So thank you.